Welcome everyone to this new episode of the Privacy Rules Privacy Espresso series, a series where I, Alessandro Di Mattia, Legal and Executive Officer from Privacy Rules, discuss together with our experts from the Privacy Rules Alliance about the most recent and trending topic related to privacy, data protection, and technologies more in general. Today I'm joined by Yugo Nagashima from the law firm Frost Brown Todd. Yugo is a partner of this US law firm that is the exclusive law firm member in the US for privacy rules, and he is one of the lead of their data protection team. So together with Yugo today, we are going to have a very quick and general overview on what's happening in the US. And I think that the most relevant thing would be having an update of what happened over 2023, and then maybe look at what is going probably to happen in 2024. So Yugo, first of all, thanks a lot for being with us today. And yes, let's start with a little overview on, which are the latest from the US in general that you think we should be aware of.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for your invitation, and good to talk to you again. So a lot happened in 2023. And I'm just going to cover more than data protection, so be ready for it. We'll start with the data protection side. Obviously, I want to start because we're privacy rules. There was U.S. adequacy, right, with the cross-border framework between the EU and the United States. Of course, there can still be litigation, but it's a big deal because now, the Privacy Shield Plus concept, right? So the cross-border framework is back. That's a very big positive for the United States, although people are very cautiously optimistic. That's the big one. In terms of U.S. domestic laws, we've seen a number of states comprehensive privacy laws come into effect. So, before we only had California at the beginning of the year, now we have more. And as you may, if anyone who's following U.S. privacy a lot, as you are aware, California has also come out with its regulations, and then there was a litigation regarding when that regulation would come into effect, and it's still being litigated. But compliance requires certain interesting things, as you may be aware, something called global privacy controls, which is a more of a technology-assisted way of opting out of the sale or the sharing. It's a specific term defined in the CCPA of personal information. Those were some of the big ticket items. In terms of the latest, right? New Jersey just passed its comprehensive privacy law in its legislature, and if it gets signed, I think it would be either the 13th or the 14th state. Sorry, I can't give you the exact number, but one of the important notes to be taken is the definition of sensitive data is relatively broad. We're seeing that compared to Europe, most U.S. states have a broader sensitive category of personal data or personal information. We should be aware of that. And I want to now turn to technology, right? On the technology side, we're seeing a lot of developments in AI. So as you know, last year was the big year where generative AI became very popular. People know that ChatGPT is becoming the norm. Universities, companies, even law firms are starting to use generative AI as part of their workflow. The Biden administration released an executive order. It's not a law, but it's like a regulation or a policy which sets out what kind of information is considered AI systems, just like the Artificial Intelligence Act. And although, unlike that Artificial Intelligence Act, which has a lot more detail and very organized and categorized, the Biden administration has made certain principles that basically lays out that AI should be used for safety of consumers, national security. It can't be biased. It has to promote technology in a way that doesn't just benefit a certain group of people. It's got to be fair to everyone. And in order to follow that principle, the Biden administration, through the executive order, has ordered each of the agencies to study generative AI and other AI technologies so that they can then further develop regulations in each different areas. And as you can understand, generative AI covers more than privacy law. It covers intellectual property law. It covers national security laws. So it's very broad. And finally, this is, I think, more practical for those who are doing business in the United States. The FTC has created a lot more requirements for breach notification. One of the big ones is the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which is the Banking Act. And before, it was only regulating banks for certain data breaches. Now it's reached out further to regulate car dealers or financial advisors. So people who before said, hey, I don't have to comply with this law, maybe now be required to comply with it. We're also saying proposed rulemaking also by the FTC to basically broaden the scope of who's covered by the healthcare information that's being collected. Usually we think of HIPAA. FTC is doing that. On the other side, Washington State has passed something called My Health, My Data Act, which governs not the healthcare data held by the insurance or covered entities, what we call what's covered by the healthcare, what's called HIPAA, right? The healthcare law that we have in the United States, but it applies to more general companies that are dealing with personal health data that's being sold or shared back and forth. Those, at least in Washington State, is now regulated. So we're seeing a lot more interest in the protection of privacy and also use of AI to protect privacy in the United States.
Thanks a lot, Yugo, for this quick introduction, and it's very interesting to hear and to listen from you, which are the new approaches that are somehow, shared with other countries. I'm thinking about the EU, where we had something very similar. I'm EU-based lawyer. We had something similar, meaning that more and more laws that are further developing the laws that were already existing. For example, for notification of authorities, we have seen for AI and similar regulation that more type of authorities needs to be notified. So there is more or less a common path, even if, of course, there are for sure some differences, as we well know. But my question to you is also, how do you see all these developing in over the course of 2024? What's your forecast, if there is any possibility to make forecasts, because those things are changing, daily?
So forecasting is very difficult, and you can be right, you can be wrong. So it's really, reading the tea leaves, looking through a crystal ball. But I will try. What I do expect is we'll have more state privacy laws passed. There may be a chance, because AI is becoming a big issue. We understand from Congress that there is bipartisan support. Bipartisan meaning, Democrats and Republicans can agree on an issue, even though we see in the United States they really don't agree on much, right? But privacy is one of the issues that they agree, because they believe protecting privacy when AI is used is very important. So we might see another attempt at passing a federal, national privacy law. But of course, that's always wishful thinking. But that's been in the discussions. What we're seeing more happen, and you've seen this in the UK too, is protection of children's privacy. There's been many attempts. There's been a lot of discussions. We might see a new children's privacy protection, either a law or regulation. My guess is it's going to be a law, a federal law. That may happen. And we will definitely see the responses from each agency about the Biden executive order on AI. So we're going to see developments in AI regulation, or at least the start of it this year. And that I can say it's not a reading of the tea leaves, because the administration has set dates, and it will fall within this year.
Great, thanks a lot, and makes sense, to try making forecasts based on some information that we already have. So that was definitely interesting and good to know. And actually, I agree that there is a lot moving on protection of children privacy. For example, recently also Brazil at the end of 2023 was moving in the same direction. So there is a lot also on that in a comparative way. And as as we are witnessing, there are so many changes that often for everyone, in particular in the legal sector, running their companies, it's very difficult to keep pace with all those changes. So considering all these, what's your practical advice? What should people running business dealing with personal data in particular look at and try to do to prepare for all those changes that we are looking for in the near future, probably?
Sure. This isn't going to be a very happy news for CEOs and the C-suite, but it must be said. Cybersecurity privacy is becoming a very important compliance point. Just like we have financial regulations, HR regulations, privacy is becoming a big part. Another aspect that happened in the United States was now the C-suite has certain reporting of cybersecurity issues to the SEC. There's the Corporate Transparency Act that also includes that. And New York State has basically modified some of its data breach notification laws for financial institutions too. So notifications is very important. Cybersecurity has become very important. And of course, in preparing for that, privacy is also a big component to that because you're seeing more laws come into play. We're also likely going to see the CPPA, which is California's Privacy Protection Agency, start to enforce further once the regulation is actually enforced, because the regulations are much more detailed and you have to follow it, and likely California will make a move. Understanding that investing in privacy is investing in the value of your company. If you protect your privacy, I think you'll get more business, because consumers will realize that consumers are really finding, because of all these laws and just the general news that comes out of the day involves privacy, especially AI is involved, right? So if companies can understand the value that privacy is actually no different than having more intellectual property, right? Your compliance of that, and you being able to say, I am compliant, I am protecting you, I do have, my website is up to date, that will likely increase the number of consumers that will trust the company and build a brand. Number one, investors will really appreciate that because there's no risk there. So investing in privacy, cybersecurity, it's a good ROI investment, right? You're not going to see the returns in terms of, hey, because I invested it, all of a sudden people pay you a lot of money. It's going to be more of a long term, but you're not going to lose your data. So you're not going to have losses, right? You're not going to have the loss of time when your system's locked out. You're not going to have an issue of being inefficient to respond to some of the consumer requests. And you're not going to have an agency saying, hey, why aren't you complying? So it's a very good investment for a relatively small amounts of dollar value. And then you're going to get the branding, you're going to get the protection, and it's worth it, because that is what government regulators and consumers are wishing to see more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And thanks, Hugo. And I think that I would like to each of you also for what concerns, for example, the reputational damage risk in relation to companies, losing their data, that's often a big risk that is not immediately considered. And then, you find out that, after a breach or any type of violation that becomes public, you are really, incurring in big risks for the company in terms of, loss of business, as well as we have witnessing over the course of 2023 more and more requests to do proper checks under the privacy perspective in the M&A sector, where
Yes.
the due diligence, including these, was essential in many cases, because it's relevant to make sure that if you are buying a new type of artificial intelligence platform is using proper acquired data, otherwise you risk to lose the entire business. So those are great points, and I actually share those with you. And I would like anything else that you would like to add, because we are running out of our time.
In another prediction, this year, AI and privacy will become even closer, more blended. So AI has many aspects of it, but what we're going to start to see is how AI can impact a person's right or freedoms, as we see in Europe, and the benefits that one can get may be lost because the AI program, if it's not monitored with a certain rule or algorithm, it may harm people from getting a good job or being able to obtain something that they were supposed to. May it be a authorization, and we may start seeing litigation on that, and that's going to connect a lot with privacy, because remember, automated decision making, which both the Europe and the United States share, is something that needs to be put in check with a human component. There should be a right to basically say automated decision making should be opted out, or we can challenge that. That may become a very important key aspect. If it's not this year, next year we're going to see litigation on that. And being on top of the compliance of GDPR or CCPA or any other state, a U.S. state privacy laws, is very important, because you will have already thought about that, right? It goes back to the concept of privacy by design. You would have already said, hey, this AI system, it's not really protecting privacy, so let's fix it, or let's make sure the agreement allows for a certain way of human intervention. If you don't do that, you get sued. Fixing it later is going to cost a lot more, and you're going to have a litigation. And regardless of where you are, you don't want to be in a dispute. So what I do expect maybe in a longer term future is investing into AI is going to eliminate risks that can be very costly. So same message, but a little more detail.
Thanks a lot, Yugo. That's extremely useful for me and for our listeners, I think. I would like to invite everyone to contact you for additional support in tech and privacy related matters. Frost Brown has a great team of experts that is capable of supporting all over. Also thanks to the membership in the Privacy Rules Alliance, of course. And yes, I really look forward to meeting you soon.